Hey guys, so before we get into today's video, I wanted to ask if you have had the chance to check out Quick Media on YouTube. Greg Matsen is one of my favorite Latter-day Saint commentators about how current events and culture interface with the church and its institutions.
A BYU protest took place this week, part of a national protest. In this episode, we are talking about what I call President Nelson's identity hierarchy, that the church is reacting to a trend in history where
Greg understands well the ideological forces at play in today's society, and he does a great job of breaking down how faithful Latter-day Saints should frame the crazy world that we live in. So check him out. Just search for Quick Media, that's CWIC Media, on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe. I wanted to throw up kind of a timeline on here. So this is something that a lot of people just don't know is, some people are under the impression like the state of Israel has been this continuous thing that's been on the earth since King David. And it's like, no. In fact, if you just read the Old Testament, the kingdom of Israel falls. And then after that, you have the life of Jesus Christ and all of that happens. And we all kind of know the story of the New Testament, but then the New Testament ends, but we don't know what actually happens kind of after that. And what a lot of people don't realize is that in 70 AD, Jerusalem is destroyed by the Romans. Okay, it's sacked by Rome. And for the next, I don't know, I think it was like 50-year, 80-year period, the Jews are essentially expelled from Israel. It's like, I didn't realize this, but like, it's kind of crazy that once the Temple of Jerusalem fell, like shortly after Jesus Christ, like the whole Jewish sort of project sort of fell apart entirely, right? Like they picked a fight with the Romans. And I have some advice for you historically. If you are a small nation, do not go toe-to-toe with the Roman Empire in a sword battle.
Well, and again, there's a parallel there, right? Because you look at someone like Barabbas, who's on the cross opposite Jesus, or would have been on the cross in place of Jesus. He's a zealot, and he is fighting the Romans because they have occupied or are, have taken over Jerusalem. And it was Antioch before that. That area has almost always been a vassal state. Even during most of the history of the Jewish people, it was a vassal state.
And the Jewish people, though, as a vassal state, though, still maintained their own sort of identity. What I didn't realize, and the reason I put the little nuclear bomb here at 70 AD was because that was sort of the end of it. It was like after that, they were scattered. And then by the 300s, the Christians actually came to be a larger group in Jerusalem and in Israel than were the Jews. And so you enter this Christian period from about roughly 300 to about 635. And in 635, this is when the new guys in town, the Muslim empires, are on the warpath, and they conquer Jerusalem and the land of Israel, Palestine. And then this is what's wild. From 600 until 1917, you have a period where essentially, and there's different Arabic kind of caliphates and things that controlled it, but roughly speaking, the Arabs controlled Israel, Palestine. And there were people that were living in this land. I mean, that's just for context. That's 5 to 6 times the length that the United States has existed. Okay. Now, they never established an official, let's call it a Palestinian state. But regardless, the people who lived in that region identified with that region. It's kind of like in the United States, if you live in a particular part of the United States, there are ethnic identities that begin to arise within that. And within that group, you could say that what arose were the Palestinian people. These were the Arabs who were Muslim and who lived in that region. And they lived there for, like I said, over the past 1,000 years. And then in 1917, the Ottoman Empire, the Arab Empire, decides to go out and say, hey, well, we're going to go fight with the Western powers. And they lost. And so then in 1917, the British take it over. And during the period of the early 20th century, you had the Zionist movement that was being created, which were basically expelled Jews saying, hey, the Arabs just got kicked out. This was kind of before that, but they were kind of like, hey, there's a movement to, why don't we get a homeland back? Like, why don't we go back and get this, reclaim our land that we historically had? Now, granted, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, but that was what the Zionist movement was about. And the British were kind of like, and after World War I, well, first World War I, people started moving in there. The Jews did. What was interesting, I didn't realize that the British eventually were like, hey, there's too many Jews coming in here. You guys are making the Arabs angry. And then they were like, knock it off. We're going to stop immigration of Jews to Israel. And then the Israelites actually attacked the British, or the Jews did, which a lot of people don't know. And then the Palestinians, or anyway, and then after World War II, well, World War II happens. And we all know that World War II was kind of rough on the Jews, and the whole world is going, oh my gosh, like this horrible thing happened to the Jewish people. And the British are like, we're trying to create a homeland for these people. And they eventually turn it over to the UN in 1947. And they basically decide to divide the land up in 1947, and a war breaks out because the Arabs are like, no, we don't want this is our land. We've been here for, however many thousand years. You're not just creating a state in the middle of our land as Palestinian Arabs. And they fought with each other. And 1948, the Jewish state wins that war. They declare their independence. And that is essentially when the Jewish state begins in 1948. But that period since 1948 till today has resulted in conflict after conflict between the Palestinian Arabs, who had maintained that land for super long, to the Jews, who now, through the means of the British and the UN, now are establishing a state on what they consider to be their territory because they've been there for super long time. And so I think the proper way to frame this, the whole conflict, is, and while there are religious undertones, obviously, to every conflict, especially this one, there is a sense in which this is two national groups, two national identities. And even secular Jews have this nationalistic fervor. And they are competing, and they have rival claims to the land, where the Palestinians are like, this is our land. This is Palestine. And the Jews are like, no, this is Israel. And so they've been fighting amongst each other. And what we have just recently witnessed is the most recent reaction of Arab Palestinians to what they perceive as the Jews invading their land. And that's the way I think that they would frame it, right? And obviously what they have done is an act of horrible, evil terrorism. And so I don't know. I wanted to just kind of throw that all out there as I look at sort of trying to frame this. Now, what am I getting right? What am I getting wrong? Anything you'd push back on that?
Well, I think you're right in saying that there are claims for both sides on the land. I don't think there's any question about that. You can go back and say, well, Israel was there before that period of time, and that's their people, and those are the Jews, and they have their temple, and their whole religion and their legacy is built on that land, and they have a covenant with that land, so to speak. But the Muslims feel the same way, right? That whole area there, including the land of Israel, is the land of a covenant, so to speak, something similar to that with the Muslims. And so it's a very touchy thing. The question is do we believe that Israel has the right to exist today at this point? Do they have a claim on the land? Do they have a right to support themselves and to live in that area? And I would say yes. I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, when they went in and Britain went in and during after World War II and the state of Israel was created, they created Jordan at the same time. They tried to create another state where there would be areas where the Arabs could live and and have a new state at that time. That was Jordan. And so it was already kind of created into a two-state solution. And the other thing I would add is I don't believe for a second that Hamas's attack has to do with just a claim on the land. I
would agree with that, by the way. Go ahead.
I think that is the beginning of it, but that you have to look at them as an ISIS, right? It's the same idea. They want they believe in the same ideology, the extremist ideology, that the entire world needs to be converted by the sword if necessary, by bomb, by whatever, by terror, and must all be converted to Islam. That is their belief. And that is what they teach everyone. And that is what their ideology is. And so for them, going and doing this it's not just we hate Jews and we want to, we're the victims of these oppressors. That's their charter itself says that they want to eliminate all Jews and eliminate the state of Israel.
Yeah.
And if you follow Hamas at all in a number of their teachings and what they've taught previously, they want the entire world to be Islamic.
I think the way I would frame it, and I think you're right, is that when you have a conflict like the general, let's call it, Palestinian-Israeli conflict over the land and the claims to it, that terrorists will take advantage of that situation and will radicalize people within those ranks to basically help them do absolute horrific evil in the name of false Islamic ideology, right? And this convert by the sword and the ISIS kind of ideology, right? And so I think what I have found is that I believe that we can get essentially from any sane person condemnation of ISIS and of Hamas, and I believe of Hezbollah and all of these groups who are terrorist organizations. Okay. You cannot, if you are killing innocent civilian people, like it is like, I'm sorry, I have zero tolerance for it. Like, I don't care. You can't justify it. Now, if I were to circle back though, to look at the general Palestinian conflict that has been going on, it does come down to what you said. And this is the tough question. Okay. You say, does Israel have, and I don't like to say even this, maybe you could say it as the right to exist, but do the Israelis have a claim to that land that is greater than that of the Palestinians? Now, here's an interesting analogy that I like to think of, okay? Let's say that you and I were living in 1948, and the UN decided that they were going to give the state of Utah, Arizona, and Nevada back to the Native Americans because they had the land historically, and that they were now going to control things, and we were going to create a new state. And if we wanted to, we could leave. We can go to California, we can go to other states, but we're going to give these states back, and you guys, and you basically have to submit to their rule. And it's the UN who is coming in and dictating this. Now, I think that you and I would be really upset about this.
Sure.
This is our land. We are Americans. Our ancestors came out here and built the cities and towns of the Intermountain West. And so I can't help but go, in 1948, I don't know that I would have supported the establishment of the nation of Israel, because I would say those people, the Arabs already live there. You can't go into their land and just set up something new there, right? Now, I knew that there were a lot. I mean, the bigger issue for me is that this outside entity is coming into these people and saying, hey, we're creating this thing. And I don't know, that has always rubbed me the wrong way. Do you see it differently?
I think it's nuanced.
If you'd like to see the full episode, please see the link in the video description. So do you enjoy the content here on Thoughtful Faith? If so, be sure to hit the notification bell. This ensures that our new videos show up on your feed. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook group called Thoughtful Saints, where myself and others discuss the sorts of topics found on this channel. And lastly, if you think other people would benefit from this video, please be sure to share it.